Good morning, everybody. Before I start today, I would like to ask for your subscription and like if you like my videos and if you like this video. It's normally something I don't ask for because I've been a little timid about it, but I have family that has been kind of coaxing me a little to kind of be a little more aggressive in that way. So I'm asking you, if you enjoy my videos, if you will please like and subscribe and make a comment. I appreciate it a lot. So today I'm going to make brunch. I'm going to make a bacon and cheese quiche. The only difference is I'm going to add some scallions, some green chopped onions for color and flavor. So I think this is probably one of the best quiches there is out there because it's just real basic and you don't need a lot of ingredients. Today I'm going to use 3 different cheeses that the recipe has, but normally I use just like cheddar, and you can use whatever cheese you like. So I really hope you enjoy this new recipe that you're going to see. These are all the ingredients you're going to use. So we're going to have 3 different cheeses, but I've also done this with just cheddar. So I'm going to do it with a half a cup of cheddar, a half a cup of mozzarella, and a third a cup of Parmesan. And because I have all these cheeses, but if you don't, you can just use any kind of cheese you want. A lot of times I use just cheddar, but so it's a half a cup of both mozzarella and cheddar, a third a cup of Parmesan. You're going to use 1 cup of milk, salt and pepper, a quarter teaspoon of each one, 4 eggs, 1 cup of milk, and usually it's 8 slices of cooked bacon, and then I use a few scallions that I'm going to chop up. And what you're going to do is you're going to do 1 baked pie shell. You're going to par bake it first because you don't want the bottom of the crust to be doughy. So what we're going to do is we're going to par bake it by lining the pan with parchment paper, and then I use beans. And I'm going to bake that at 350 degrees for 13 to 15 minutes, and then I'm going to take it out, remove the parchment paper and the beans, and I'm going to cool the crust for a few minutes, and then I'm going to fill it with our egg mixture, which I'm going to show you. So we'll get started. We have our bacon all crisped up, and so all the ingredients that are going to go in, the filling, are all done. And you can purchase a ready-made pie crust if you want. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to show you with a homemade pie crust. I'm going to make 1 pie crust, and you can watch along with this and see how I make my 1 crust. Like I said, you can buy it or however you want, but this is a really easy recipe. So what it is I have a third a cup of butter in here. You can use shortening or lard or whatever you want, but when I make my pie crust, I use butter now. So then you're going to use a cup of flour, and you're going to use a half a teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to put 3 tablespoons of cold water. And I just poured some water in this cup. It's easier to do it that way. And then put 3 tablespoons of cold water. And this is going to make a flaky crust because I'm using cold butter. So now what I'm going to do is go over to the mixer and use a dough hook and just mix this up. So I'll meet you over there. You're going to want to use kind of just a regular pie plate. You're not going to want to use a deep dish one because you want the quiche to cook all the way through. You don't want it to be too thick. So this is just an 8.5 inch regular pie plate. So I'm going to line it with parchment paper. And then I'm going to pour, I have a little container here where I keep my, I can't use this parchment paper again because it's already been used, but I keep my beans in here. I store them for my pie crust, for my blind baked pie crust. That way I don't have to waste a bunch of beans. And you can also use pie weights if you want, but I use beans. And what it does is it holds the crust down and keeps it from sinking down. So I'm going to fill this as high as I can. And these beans, I've used them several times, and they you know, lasted. And it's just a good way to hold the crust down and let it not shrink. And so right now what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the refrigerator for 30 minutes after I put the crust in here. That's how it's going to work. So here's our one crust dough. You can see the butter in it because I used cold butter, and it makes the crust just flakier if you use cold butter. And you can kind of fold it, and it will be very, very flaky. So if you have your own store-bought crust, like I said, that's fine. Whatever works for you. But here I'm just showing you how to make your own single crust and show you how easy it is to make your own crust. I do have a video on how to make pie crust. I think I have a double crust and a single crust, so you can go on there if you want. So I'm going to roll this out. So here's our pie crust, our one layer pie crust. Now if I was blind baking this, which means if I was using it to just bake it and then fill it with cream like a cream pie, I would do something called docking, which you would poke the edges and all over so that the steam could escape. But I'm not going to use this as a cream pie because it's going to have a filling. It's going to have the quiche filling. So instead of blind baking it, which means it'll be a fully baked pie crust to fill with a cream, it's going to be a par baked pie crust, which means I don't need to dock it and prick it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 13 to 15 minutes and partially bake it after I take it out of the refrigerator. And I'm going to now refrigerate this for 30 minutes with the beans and parchment paper. Here's our pie crust. It hasn't been baked yet, but I wanted to show you before and after. So what I'm going to do is put this in the refrigerator now for 30 minutes. So it's going to set the crust. The crust will be formed more, and then after that we'll par bake it. Here's our pie shell that I just took out of the refrigerator. Now this was in the refrigerator over an hour because I was busy doing things. But normally, as long as you refrigerate this 30 minutes, that's all you need. So this is how this has been used enough because now the edges are like this. So I'm going to take this. This is where I store my beans for future uses, so I don't have to throw away beans. I just take it out like this. I grab onto it like this, and I transfer it to my container. And I save this next time I want to make a blind baked crust or a par one. And now the purpose of refrigerating this is now it's nice and firm, so it's not going to shrink, and the beans held it together. So now we're going to put this aside, and we are going to put all of our mix in here. So it's 4 eggs. This is our filling, our quiche filling, and I've kept these eggs at room temperature. This morning I took them out of the fridge and they've been out. They're fresh, I've just had them out. So you're going to add all your ingredients, which are 4 eggs, a cup of milk, and all the cheeses I told you about. But I'm going to mix this together first. And you can just use a whisk. You don't need a mixer to do this. And then a 1/4 teaspoon each of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to add my cheeses, and all the amounts, I already gave them to you, but They'll still be in the description underneath the video. And I am using the 3 cheeses that the video says to use, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I just use cheddar. And then here's some onions. I didn't measure. I would say that's probably about a 1/4 cup of onions. And then your bacon. And it's like 8 slices of bacon, but this is like super thick bacon, so I used 4, which is plenty. It's kind of like, if you're using a thinner bacon, you'll use more of it. So this is all mixed together, and now we're going to pour it in our pie shell. This is one of those quiche recipes that you can add a couple of other seasonings if you want to give it a little more flavor. So I'm going to add just a couple of sprinkles of smoked paprika, and it's optional. It's just something I like, and I've put it in my quiches before and I really like it. It's not part of the standard recipe though. It's just something I like. So now we're just going to pour this quiche mixture in our pie crust, just like this. And now it's ready to go in a 350-degree oven for 40 to 50 minutes. And you don't need to do anything else for it. Okay, I made a mistake, and I'm just going to come on here and tell you because I can't fix it. What you're supposed to do before you pour in your quiche mixture is you're supposed to par bake it first, which I did everything up until that. I planned it all, and then I forgot to do it. So what I did now was, since I already poured the mixture in, I can't do anything about it. So I'm putting it on the bottom rack so it can bake the bottom of the crust for about 13 to 15 minutes. But normally it would have gone in on the center rack with no filling in it, just the crust. That's what par baking it is, partially baking it. So since I blew it, it's in the oven right now, and I'm going to bake it on the bottom rack for about 13 or 15 minutes. And then I'm going to put it on the middle rack, and that part is supposed to cook 40 to 50 minutes, so I'll go with 40 to start. So that's how we're going to rectify it. There's always a way, but I'm letting you know what I did wrong. Okay, I'll be back. So here's our quiche, and it looks really good, and it doesn't shake. It's firm. You can tell just by looking. The crust is done really well. The quiche itself is golden, and it's set. So this should cool about 15 to 20 minutes. I fixed the problem. So what I did, like I said, I cooked it on the bottom rack for about 13 minutes, filled, and then I moved it to the upper rack and cooked it about 30 more minutes. So in my oven, it took about 45 minutes to bake this whole thing, including the par bake, which should have been done before I put the filling in, but I did bake it on the lower rack instead of par baking it. It turned out just wonderful. So the next thing is our taste test. Turned out just right. So if you ever have something that you forget to do or something goes wrong, most of the time you can rectify it. So this cooked just perfectly because we did put it on the bottom rack for 13 minutes, or you can go 15 depending on your oven. And it cooked the bottom first, and then we moved it after that to the middle rack and cooked it another, but my oven, it cooked in 30 minutes. So let's give this a try. Really good. Excellent. Really, really perfect. If you like quiche and you want a simple recipe, this is very easy to make and very simple. You can use your own crust, make your own homemade crust like I showed you, or you can go buy one in the store. It doesn't matter. Whatever's comfortable for you. So I hope you make this, and I hope it turns out great. Thank you. I want to come on here and show you. It's always good to show the tricks of the trade and all the little details. So as you know, I made a mistake by not par baking the crust before I filled it. Well, I did improvise, and I want to show you the bottom of it. As you can see here, the crust is fine. It did cook. So I've learned that I don't need to par bake it. I just need to, I can do it after I fill it if I have to, and just cook it on the bottom rack for 15 minutes, and that solves the problem. So live and learn.